Well, hello, good evening, and welcome to Humanity versus Insanity, the Crane Report. Well, this is the first live show of the Crane Report of 2015. Over the past 2 weeks, we played out the video of my presentation recorded in Brisbane at the back end of November last year. The title being Apathy Kills, the greatest threat to humanity ever. Well, I should be doing a UK version of that presentation later this year. In fact, a preview of it will be at St Anne's, just down the coast from Blackpool on Monday the 2nd of February. More of that later. And then through the back end of March and April, I'll be taking it on the road, and we'll be taking a look at some of the key events that people really need to take a look at in the run-up to the forthcoming election. And I think that along with many others, I shall be making a few predictions about the outcome of those elections, because as I think we probably all realise by now, the outcome of those elections will not be decided by the electorate. The decisions at this juncture are far too important for the people to decide, as I paraphrase Henry Kissinger. Well, 2015 has kicked off pretty much as we expected it to kick off. As we have discussed on numerous programs in 2014, the global elite, the socio-psychopathic global corporatists, are now entering into the final stages of their endgame. They know that there are many of us who see through the charade, who know what's occurring, but they work on the basis that we are very much the minority, and they can do what they do with absolute impunity, because the vast majority of people can be literally treated like mushrooms, fed manure and kept very much in the dark, because they know full well that they haven't got the time, even if they had the inclination, to do their own research. The good news is, though, that there are now many thousands, maybe tens of thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands of people who do see through it. And this is growing exponentially. So consequently, if there are any flaws in the official version of events, they are pretty much exposed in the days, even sometimes hours, after the event is perpetrated. Now, when I was in Australia, I was talking about Tony Abbott's statement in the Australian Parliament, where he was effectively advising Australians that they needed to be prepared to give up some of their freedoms in return for their security. And in private conversations, I was making the observation that it sounded like Australia might have something planned to bring that about. And sure enough, in December, just a week or so after, once again, this male inability to do two things at once always lets me down on a live show. So let me just pull this up here. There we go. Then we have the Sydney siege, the siege in the Lindt Cafe. And I'm not going to spend too much time on that, because that was now a few weeks ago. And if anybody believes that this wasn't a false flag event, then I can only encourage you to go back and take a look in greater detail. And of course, literally in the last 10 days, or not even now, 7 days, we had this incredible event in Paris. Now, my guest tonight was with me back in October. And in October, we were discussing the fact that Israel was now very much behind the 8 ball, because after the furtherance of its genocidal agenda and the bombardment of Gaza, more and more people around the world, and even the mainstream, were not able to ignore the fact that Israel was very much a rogue state. So it's with great pleasure that I welcome back Ken O'Keefe. Ken, how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well. What an exciting year we have already.
Well, really, and I think it's pretty much kicked off as we expected. The socio-psychopathic global corporatists are very much out there, desperate to hang on to their dominion. But of course, increasingly, people are seeing through it. Is that your take on things?
It's just no question, when a certain level of understanding exists, there is no turning it back. You can't unlearn it. And if there were any way to actually be able to reverse the process of awareness, it would be by bringing in a larger middle class and a larger level of comfort again, because it's amazing how stupid and blind people can be when they're comfortable. But when life becomes uncomfortable, apparently this has a tremendous effect on our ability to be aware and actually see. And I just don't see any way with the fraudulent financial system that exists, the whole petrodollar system. The US dollar is the reserve currency of the world. The insane amounts of fraud with regard to virtually everything that supposedly is involved with our financial system, from the fraudulent stock market to gold and silver prices to everything you can possibly imagine. Oil. Look at oil. This has nothing to do with supply and demand. This is about somebody saying, okay, bring it down 50% in 6 months. This is not a glut in the market because we've got American shale and all this sort of stuff. They can turn it up or down however they want. It's completely rigged. And really, even if they tried to make it more prosperous for the average person and increase the size of the middle class, which that's the reverse of what's happening, there's no way really to erase what people know. This is growing, and they know it. The powers that be know it, and they're desperate. And I have to give them some credit. While they have a disproportionate ability to carry out this kind of insanity, they have tremendous resources. Hey, they've managed to buy more time and fool a lot more people. And okay, but there's this growing awareness that it can't be reversed.
And you know what? It's almost like maybe somebody was watching my Brisbane presentation, because the front line of The Guardian today, on the top of the page, it says half the global wealth now held by 1%. Which was, the theme. I was showing the enormous disparity in the distribution of wealth. And of course, literally over the past couple of years, there has been massive quantitative easing. And the reality is that fake cash that has been pumped into the system hasn't done what it was allegedly intended to do, which was to provide the opportunity for a little bit of redistribution. It's effectively gone into the hands of that 1%. So that 1% has just become even more outrageously wealthy than they were before. Lost you, Ken.
One of the things that I wasn't really fully understanding until fairly recently was that, okay, with all these trillions of quantitative easing, pumping cash, why aren't we in hyperinflation yet? And this was a problem for me. I couldn't really figure it out, but I realized it, and for many people, I'm sure this is basics 101, but nonetheless, it took me a while to figure it out until someone made a comment that I realized, and it is that the money that they've been producing, all these trillions and trillions of dollars, hasn't been going into the real economy.
Exactly.
It's going into the major banks, and the major banks have no incentive to actually put that into the real economy with loans and stuff like that. They can use that as their funny money to make all these dodgy investments in derivatives and all that kind of stuff, but that doesn't really actually go into the real economy. So that's why we don't have hyperinflation. So in a way, it's good that they're not pumping all of that money into the actual real economy, because if they did, as if we don't know this already. I mean, I know what the cost of a pint of beer is, or whatever, if you eat Big Macs or any of this kind of stuff. Look at the prices. I mean, 5 years, 10 years ago, it is astronomical, but it's not hyperinflation. As soon as this whole house of cards comes tumbling down, this fraudulent system is going to show us what it's like to live in a third world country. And those of us who are used to living in so-called first world countries are going to get a taste of what it's like for the rest of the world. This is coming. And I know people don't realize, they don't think it's possible. They've lived their whole lives with this false prosperity based on a fraudulent financial system that imparts greater prosperity to certain groups of people over others. It has nothing to do with their industriousness or how much more value or intelligence they have. Nothing to do with that at all. It's just a fraudulent system that favors some at the expense of the many. And that system's coming down. So
Well, it's coming down. It's got to come down because increasingly more and more people are starting to realise just how much they are getting shafted. I mean, to use the monopoly analogy that I've used now for best part of about 5 years, 6 years, and that is what's happening right now. Is it's like the 1% own everything on the monopoly board except Old Kent Road, which is like, one of the sort of throwaway ones at sort of £60 or whatever. So these guys own the entire board, and all you're left with is Old Kent Road. And then somebody says, actually, you know what? We're going to have some quantitative easing, and instead of giving it to the guy that owns Old Kent Road and give him an opportunity to get back in the game, we're going to give it to the bank. Yeah. So that they've now got everything they need to suck this guy dry. And this is exactly, of course, what is happening. The global corporatists are literally going for broke. They are going for total ownership of the board. Yeah. And here comes my first prediction. And, of course, I reserve the right to modify this as the hustings unfold in the run-up to the UK election. Mm-hmm. But my forecast is that right now, the UK public is being groomed to accept a far-right coalition of the Tory party and UKIP. It's going to be a Cameron-Farage coalition. The Labour Party are effectively going to be wiped out. They've already lost Scotland thanks to their brilliant mishandling of the Scottish referendum. So they've lost all the seats in Scotland, and now the Green Party are getting all the publicity to deliberately split the left vote, so that Cameron and Farage, forget the Lib Dems, they're a spent force. So Cameron and Farage are effectively going to mop up. My prediction right now is that they're going to end up with about 350 seats, and then God help us, because what we are going to have is a government that will do the corporations' bidding even more than we've seen before. And the only real opposition will literally be grassroots opposition with boots on the ground.
Yeah, I think that's very realistic, but I might differ with you in that I think that's a good thing. Excellent. I don't believe anybody rose the awareness of the American people more than the whole neocon, Jewish supremacist George Bush years. Those were the first years in American history where the American people were forced to question, do I really come from the greatest nation in the world? And if I do, how is it possible that George Bush is the leader of the greatest country in the world? So bring it on. Have a far right, it's all the immigrants, that's the problem. If we just get rid of the immigrants and cut ourselves off, everything's going to be rosy. Bring it on. Bring on that agenda. I'll give you a prediction as well. I wouldn't disagree with that one. It looks pretty plausible to me. But Greece, on the brighter side, Greece could be one of the great, great, great things that might be happening in the next couple of months, because I think this is an example
in the next week, actually, in the next week.
Exactly. I mean, we'll see how it plays out, whoever wins, but yes, it could play out very, very fast. I think, going back to what I was saying earlier about comfort, the Greek people have been very uncomfortable for a while. So they're very receptive to information that people who are more comfortable don't seem very receptive to. And I think they've educated themselves quite a lot about what a scam it is to continue being part of the EU and taking IMF loans and all this sort of stuff. There's no benefit at all. You're only selling your nation further down the river. And I believe they understand this to such an extent now that even if those who are going to come into power next wanted to reverse the process or reverse their campaign promises, I don't think they could. And I actually, from what I can tell, I don't think they intend to. I believe they will fulfill the campaign promise. I believe it's almost inevitable that Greece will exit the EU. Excellent example for the rest of the EU nations. And as it becomes more uncomfortable for other parts of the EU, which invariably with these ridiculous, insane sanctions against Russia and other insane policies, they're going to start looking more and more at options, and this is going to be the option.
You are, of course, making the assumption, Ken, that Syriza will get into office in Greece, which also makes the assumption that the election will not be tampered with by the global corporatists, who know very well that Syriza has the popular majority in Greece right now.
Indeed, and you could make the very same argument for the referendum in Scotland. It's
Exactly.
very clear to me that that was rigged. If there had been any fairness in reporting and the scare tactics weren't so extreme and all of the various means to be able to manipulate the people into the vote that favors the powers that be, if we took all that away, I don't think there's any question that it would have been Scottish independence for sure. But hey, has it changed anything? From what I can tell, the Scottish independence movement has only increased in power. It's only a matter of time before we revisit that whole thing. And I honestly think the Scottish people will be intelligent enough to make sure that there won't be any fraud next time around. So I definitely agree with you. I can't know for sure who's going to win, and even if they do win, if they can manage to get beyond fraudulent elections processes, which seem to be the norm everywhere we go, I just have a feeling that it's going to happen. But even if it doesn't, the majority of people, if it's as strong as I believe it is, are going to be really upset if they get another branded BS version of whatever they are selling to people. It's not gonna fly. It's not going to fly.
No,
they might buy some time at best.
And of course, the reality is that we know the change is coming, one way or another. And the reality is that it can come the easy way or the hard way. And the easy way is for people who are still literally burying their heads in the proverbial sand to take a look around them and see what's occurring and start to participate. Or we can do it the hard way, which is literally wait for the monopoly players, the global corporatists, to literally strip everyone of everything they have. And only then might they start to realise that it's about time that if they don't fight back, then pretty much the lives that they are condemning future generations to are ones of unimaginable abject misery.
Indeed, indeed. For me, it seems a rather, kind of philosophical matter of if you base your actions individually or collectively on fear, there's no, good luck to you. I mean, it's not a good path to walk. You can't base your actions on fear. And of course, this is the main method of manipulation and control of the powers that be. Fear, fear, fear. In the case of Greece, oh my God, if you leave the EU, your currency and your economic system will just fall to pieces and you'll be in an even worse position. So,
well, you mean just like Iceland?
Exactly. Exactly. And we can look at other examples in history where, people have taken back the right to coin and mint their own money, and the prosperity that ensues with a sensible policy that is not based on a fraudulent system of indebting people through usury. It works. It does. And it really, the main prerequisites are transparent, non-usury based, non-debt based, and there you have it. I mean, there are a lot of details, and I'll leave that to people with more expertise, but the bottom line is very simple: transparent, non-usury based. It's controlled by the people. It's very simple. Do something like that. Trust me, it'll be a hell of a lot better than the existing system. The only way to really move forward and make a better world is to not base your actions on fear, but love. If you love your country, if you love your culture, if you love this planet, if you love liberty, if you love freedom for real, then base your decisions on that, and it will guide you the right way. Don't let the fear control you. That's what they want to do. They want to make you fearful. They want to make you afraid. They want to make you want to question what deep down is right. Down deep that, come on, debt, IMF debt, are you stupid? Come on. Does that work for anybody? No, it doesn't. It's not meant to. It's meant to concentrate power further. Don't be stupid. Don't, let the fear of it being worse by not going into that crap prevent you from doing what is right.
And the Hungarians, of course, realize that because literally a few months ago now, the Hungarians effectively invited the IMF to leave town. And Hungary is in the process of completely revamping its economy without the basis of debt, without relying on this fake debt that is used to enslave a whole nation. So, and of course, in the North America, as I've mentioned many, many times in the past, there is the classic example of North Dakota. North Dakota is the only state in the US that isn't bankrupt, and that's because it's the only state that's been outside the Federal Reserve System since 1922.
Isn't it just crystal clear? Isn't it just crystal clear? The answer is not nearly as complex as the so-called experts make it out to be. It's something that we could do tomorrow. One of the things, another reason why I'm very optimistic while realistic, we could have a full-on nuclear war tomorrow. I mean, there is that risk. But, my optimism stems from many things. But one of them is this. eventually, I'm not a genius here. I really am not. I might be slightly above average. Maybe I'm average. I don't know. But I mean, I understand things. But one of the things I understand is this. At some point, especially as people become more uncomfortable, when the question is finally asked amongst the collective citizenry of the world, okay, we're in debt. Well, there's one real simple question to them. Who are we in debt to?
Yeah.
Well, the richest people on the planet who own everything. Wow, we owe them money. There must be hard pressed for money, huh? They need that extra money from us. They couldn't forgive that debt, huh? When people figure that stuff out, I'll tell you what, I don't care how much power and how much might and security guards and all resources you have as a Rothschild and all these other banking families. Good luck to you. Good luck to you. Because I'll tell you what, there'll be many billions of people who, once they understand this, are going to be hard-pressed not to find a way to get to you. They will get to you on this planet, in this earth, in this mortal coil. So, I hope for your own sake you realize this game is up and end it now. I don't care. Make the big move. Go for it. As far as I'm concerned, if you can manage it, and we as people are so stupid and so servile and cowardly that we allow this to happen, and they actually achieve this goal of absolute control, I have to give them some credit. I have to say, to a certain extent, I have to give them some credit, a certain level of respect even. Okay, I'm for one, I'm not one of these sheep who's going to sit here and buy this crap, but okay, if you can manage to convince the rest of us, I don't know, is that worse? I don't know that that's worse. I think it's worse to be a cow and to bow and, literally prostrate yourself and bend over and take it where the sun don't shine. That's pretty pathetic, man. I don't know why you would do that, but I'm hopeful that humanity, and I see it happening. I mean, it's rising, but, eventually we got to do what we got to do.
Well, I hope you're right, Ken. And a big part of the problem is the bondage of assets. And, I have, I'm going to be talking about this a little bit later on this evening, but, last week, I was invited through the papers that I was served to deposit some £34,000 plus a bit of change into the bank account of Rathlin Energy. And this is my share of the costs for challenging the eviction order of the Crawberry Hill Protection Community. And, of course, what these corporations absolutely rely on is that people have worked their asses off to accumulate the assets, to buy their house, to be mortgaged up to the gunnels, of course. I love that mortgage death grip.
Yeah.
Plus, of course, more, debt-ridden with credit cards, etc., etc. So they have to keep running ever faster on the treadmill to pay off those debts. Well, you know what? I am their worst fucking nightmare because I have nothing. And, the way to challenge these guys is to literally have nothing. So, I'm about to respond to the High Court invitation to pay Rathlin $34,000 and change by basically telling them very diplomatically to go take a hike. I'm also going to make the observation that I don't believe for 1 minute that I have a responsibility to pay that money. And I'm in the process, with the help of the appropriate legal counsel, of taking it to the European Union, where we are going to argue that this is how the corporations literally bully the people of the world into kowtowing to their every whim. The fact that this is a company that is determined to frack East Yorkshire over one of the most sensitive underground aquifers in the country is neither here nor there. So, but this is what it needs. It unfortunately, it needs people to be able, or who are prepared to divest themselves of these assets, so that you get yourself into a situation where you have nothing that they can take away, but you have the opportunity to mount multiple challenges. But one way or another, we absolutely have to break this insanity, and we have to show ever-increasing numbers of people just how insane this current state of play really is.
So true. This is, this is why very, very few people have been able to speak really honestly and from the heart about the way this world functions, because even if you have a good heart, and people do, most people do. Most people are not evil. I don't buy for a second the cynical point of view that we're all selfish and greedy and we don't have any problem stepping over other people to get to the top and so on. That's actually a minority, a small minority of people. But when you have scarce resources and you have this huge pool of people fighting for scarce resources, then yeah, people will do incredible things. If you take a chicken that's roaming, chickens that are roaming the fields and whatnot, they act as chickens do. Take 6 battery hens and stick them into a cage, and guess what? They will cannibalize each other. They'll go nuts, man, competing for finite resources and just not having any way to move. So human beings are basically the same kind of thing, and we are nuts, and we're doing things that are not natural to us, and they're definitely not healthy. I only knew what it was to have a little bit of money in the last year because my mom passed on, and she had a few resources, and I inherited that. And in the last year, I only started to realize, like, shit, as much as it's nice to have a few resources, now I'm starting to be concerned about how to protect it and all this kind of stuff, which was never a concern for me before. And I'll do my best and whatnot, and I've already willed it to the people that are appropriate in my life and so on and so forth. But the bottom line is, you're right. When you get attached to the material, when you get addicted to the material, they can own you. And if you're not, they can't control you. So, this is part of the game. And I think that happens at a very early age. I come from Southern California, epitome of materialism and superficiality. And once they get you in that realm, they own you.
Well, I'm sure you've already looked at it, but I think you need some counsel on trusts. Because this is how
Indeed.
The elite or those who kiss the butts of the elite protect their assets. They put them into trusts and foundations, and we have to use exactly the same game rules as they use. To make sure that basically they have nothing that they can access from us. So that we challenge them, and hopefully we'll show increasingly more and more people how to do this. It's one of the elements of AV6, which I know you're going to be participating in later this year, and it'll be a week after the elections in the middle weekend of May. And one of the things that we will be focusing on is looking at the tools that those who think they're the rightful rulers use to sort their assets away, and of course we need to make sure that everyone else has the same opportunity. So, sorry, Ken, go on.
No, indeed, actually, and that's the trust tactic which is used by the rich and famous is exactly what my mother used, and the transition from her controlling these assets to me was as smooth as you can expect, especially with me being quite a target. I'm almost a little bit surprised that I was able to transfer these assets. But the bottom line is, I don't, whatever, take it all away from me, whatever. I mean, that simply is not the way I live my life. If I have a few assets, I'll try and do the best I can with it. But when you're addicted to it, they control you. And that's it as well. Like they're going to bleed a turnip. They're going to get 34 grand out of you. Good luck. Go ahead. Go for it. Mostly it's a fear thing again. They're just trying to get you scared and afraid of the consequences. And when you're not afraid of it, whatever, they have nothing.
I mean, as you can see, I'm absolutely quaking here. And you know what? I should be putting my name to a few more cases where, the corporations actually try and bully people. I don't care how big the bill runs up, because basically they're getting diddly squat. These companies are actually operating on the basis of fake debt. They have no money. They have no assets. So they're digging literally a financial black hole based on money that doesn't exist in the first place, being pumped into these activities. So, I'm actually looking forward to the opportunity of explaining in a court just how it is that this money doesn't exist, and because it doesn't exist, therefore there's no way I owe this money or any other money to Rathlin. And I know that the barristers will do a damn sight better job than me anyway, so, actually I'll leave it to them. And, of course, it gives us an opportunity to take it to the European courts as well. So, anyway, the bottom line is this also will be ramping up Rathlin's debt even more. So let's hope that they've got some pretty deep pockets too. Because one way or another, it's down to them, buddy. Indeed.
Yeah, it's a good thing. I might be going to court this year as well for various exercising of rights and whatnot, and I've dealt with that all for many years now, and no problem. Whatever I have to say, I've got, the BBC license, a couple times in the last couple of years. I always get a good chuckle with that. Like, yeah, can you imagine paying?
I am absolutely staggered that anybody still pays that. Yeah. I mean, it is the most fraudulent tax, in this country. And as far as I'm concerned, the bottom line is nobody should be paying that license, period. Oh, and you don't need to pay it. I mean, I don't have a TV, so I don't pay it anyway. But, I mean, basically, people don't need to watch TV. They can always watch it later on, and then, it's not, they don't need a license to do that.
And even if you do have a TV, we don't have a TV either. Who cares? Whatever. There's some great videos on YouTube. I love some of these people have come out and said, listen, mate, I'm not funding your pedophile ring. If that's your thing, you go ahead and do that, but I'm paying for that. And as if it ain't bad enough with your whole war propaganda and your lies, you guys cover for pedophiles. So while you want to walk door to door and collect fees for this pedophile ring, you might want to think twice about coming to this door again, because I ain't paying for it. So, there are a lot of people out there who are understanding that as well.
Absolutely. And of course, talking to paedophiles, wasn't it rather convenient that all of the Prince Andrew case got taken off the front pages last week?
That worked out well, didn't it?
God damn. I mean, it couldn't have scripted that better, could they? I mean, the classic of this, is back in 2000 and I think it was 2005. And maybe a few people will remember this, but you may remember that there were two undercover SAS operatives who were captured in Iraq.
In Basra.
And they were desperate. The British establishment was desperate to get that off the front pages. And Kate Moss was the fool guy on that occasion.
Well, she was doing coke, right?
Yeah, that was when, which was old news.
Yeah.
And it wasn't exactly news anyway, was it? But it was old news. So they trot out Kate Moss, big splash all over the pages, which gets the two SAS undercover guys off the front pages. Yeah. And then, of course, in return, because she's taken one for the team, so a year later, of course, she picks up a mega contract with BHS. Yeah. British Home Stores, as it was, and I mean, this is how the fool guys are rewarded. They take the hit, absorb all the pressure, and then a year down the road, obviously, they get the return. Now, so basically, of course, here we go. I think we got this coming up on the screen here. Eventually, yeah, there we go. We've got. This is one of the stills. I'm not going to show the videos because they're systematically getting taken down, and people can find the videos from the Charlie Hebdo siege massacre, call it what you will. Yeah. But the bottom line is that as you go through this, then more and more it looks like a false flag operation. And Ken, I just want to flag up some. Things that follow the pattern here.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to cover. Feel free to comment here. But 5 facts for me that prove the Paris massacre was about as genuine as 9/11 and the London bombings.
Yeah.
And of course, Bali 1, Bali 2, Mumbai, Madrid, and all of the other stuff that's trotted out as part of the fear porn. Yeah. And of course, just like we had the passport that miraculously survived the crash into the Twin Towers on 9/11. Here we have the terrorist who leaves his ID card in the car. Conveniently, very conveniently. And of course, this is the same as the London bombings where, the driver's licenses were found on the tube trains. And in fact, whoever planted the evidence really screwed up. Because one of the London bombers, his ID was found in 2 locations. So somebody obviously forgot, which script they were due to follow there. Fact number 2, the getaway car and the abandoned car in which the ID was found are 2 different cars of the same Citroen C3 model. Again...
Oops.
You couldn't really make this up. The bottom line is these guys are not that creative. They tend to follow much the same script. And, of course, just like we've seen the security cameras turned to face in the opposite direction or not work at all. Yeah. The offices of Charlie Hebdo were under 24/7 security, and that was conveniently withdrawn. So I'm not suggesting that the victims were aware that they were being set up, but unfortunately they were obviously being used as high-profile targets.
Yeah.
Fact number 4, eyewitness reports from France Info Radio and the role of the police and suspicious character was spotted 4 hours prior to the attack. So obviously everything was being cased to make sure that, whatever was being perpetrated here could go off without a hitch. And number 5, and this is standard, all 4 terrorists were police informers.
Yeah.
Terrorist recruiters known and working for French intel. Basically the same thing we see everywhere. Now,
not on that list is the video, which, as right, they should be pulling that off, because 100%, absolutely 100%, the video where the cop is getting shot on the ground is most definitely fake. There is no question about it. Absolutely 100%. And if the video is fake, well, then everything else is fake. Because there ain't no reason real terrorists are going to make a fake video when the whole point is to go kill a bunch of people. What do you need a fake video for?
Wait, and you know what, Ken? I was speaking to somebody who is, and I mean this, in absolutely non-derogatory sense, of course, who is the epitome of Middle England. And, this guy, certainly wouldn't normally question the official version of events. But he happened to see that video, and he said at that moment that he knew that the whole event was staged. Because there is no way a guy firing a rifle at point-blank range at a guy's head, if he hits him in the head, there's anything left of his head.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I'm an ex-Marine. I've been in combat. Trust me, a 7.62 millimeter round from an AK-47 at point-blank range hitting the head is definitely going to leave a little bit of a mess.
And there wasn't even any blood, was there?
No blood. Even when they run back to the car, and there's one frame or two where you can actually see the guy still on the ground. But even more convincing than that, to a certain extent, is the fact that if you actually watch the video, and it's slowed down, and there's some great videos out there doing this. When the shot is actually fired, there is zero movement. No, you could potentially, depending on the angle, not see blood right away, but there is no movement in the head at all. And in fact, you can see the cop's face and hands. And after the shot is fired, he still moves slowly in the same consistent manner towards the ground to where he's just lying there in sort of a fetal position.
There was no back and to the left.
There's no movement. Let's watch, let's watch JFK assassination as an example.
Exactly.
When a round hits the head, trust me, the head's going to move a bit, and you're also going to see a big chunk of skull and brain, removed from the head, especially at that distance. But there's no movement at all. Not. I mean, you could potentially, the bullet could enter the back of the head and go out the side of the head that's not visible, and you might not see any blood. That is possible. But you would see some movement of the head, and certainly the guy's face and his hands would not continue in the same steady manner to the... It's blatant. It's a fake video, and amongst all the other things you've mentioned, and I'm sure more things will be revealed soon enough.
Absolutely. I mean, this is just scratching the surface. And,
it is, yeah.
And, to be honest, this time round, I mean, I had other things that I needed to focus on. And the beauty is that literally in the last, 14 years, or 13 and a half years, the number of people who look at this stuff has increased so exponentially.
Yeah.
That, whereas after 9/11, there was literally about 24 of us who were focused on this. Now I don't need to bother because there's so many other people looking at it. I can pick up that information, within a day or two from other people's research. And I am so grateful to them for doing that. And of course, the more eyes that you have on something like this, the more you pick up the inconsistencies. And so, our message to the establishment is that very well that there are literally tens, if not hundreds of thousands of us out there who know that this is fake. The evidence that is in the public domain clearly demonstrates that it was a false flag event. And the bottom line, as Ken rightly says, you can't unknow what you know. And once people, like the individual I mentioned just now who represents Middle England, and once they see that it was false flag, then it starts the domino effect of them starting to question everything they thought they knew. So, we're on a roll here.
Indeed, and I'll tell you what, Ian, you're lowballing here. It ain't even in the millions, man. We're talking tens of millions and potentially hundreds of millions. There are, I mean, let's look at the statistics. This is from official polls and whatnot about 9/11. Over half the people in America, actually well more than half at this point, don't believe the official version. That means that people are already right to the understanding that what the official version is, and this is a dramatic change, dramatic. 10 years ago, certainly in the aftermath of 9/11, very, very few people would have thought that the powers that be, their media and all that, could be blatantly lying uniformly about this, and that their own government could actually be involved in mass murder of their own citizens. But now people understand that to a great degree around the world and in Western countries. And if you look at just the numbers in a country like France or England or America and the West in general, the number is in the millions. I'm actually quite sure it's in the tens of millions of people who don't buy the official version. And while they'll still get large numbers of people to come out and do their whole free speech ridiculousness and whatnot, there are so many people out there that know this isn't true. I think your man in Middle England is an excellent example. If that's just a normal Middle England man, who's just not into conspiracies and all that sort of stuff, if someone like that is believing, come on. There are a huge number. There's millions and millions of people who know about false flags, tens of millions already.
Absolutely.
So
but Ken,
the numbers are very problematic.
As is always the case, we've run out of time, unfortunately. But we have a situation here, of course. The fear porn is being ramped up. We've got David Cameron speaking very much with the proverbial forked tongue, demanding the protection of freedom of speech everywhere else in the world, except, of course, right on his doorstep here in the UK, where he knows damn well that freedom of speech is the one thing that he absolutely needs to shut down in a hurry, which is why after the elections, the Cameron-Farage coalition will work to abolish the Human Rights Act in the UK. So people need to be very, very well aware, if they're not already, that the focus in the UK is to shut down criticism, shut down the freedom of speech, and to make sure that the establishment line is followed at all costs. Ken, your sum up.
Well, this thing that's just happened. It's worth mentioning, of course, that France had just also
recognized
supported Palestine. We also know that Hollande, he's a puppet and all, but he came out publicly and said these sanctions against Russia, which are completely and totally insane, need to be ended. Of course they do. And also apparently there was a meeting between Hollande and Putin, very unplanned, unexpected meeting at an airport in Russia, in which he was apparently, and I don't know this for sure, but was handing over information to Putin that a huge false flag was going to occur and it was going to be blamed on Russia. So there are a lot of coincidences here, which I stopped believing in coincidences a long time ago. The powers that be still have a tremendous amount of resources, but they're desperate as hell. So I'm actually quite happy to see them do this. I don't like people being killed, of course, like any sane person. I don't like it, and I'm sick and tired of it, and I want it to stop. But people are being murdered, are being slaughtered, are starving, and all sorts of madness every single day, all of it unnecessary. So if it takes them and they're playing their little shenanigans to go ahead and wake up more people, good. And that's what's exactly happening. So I don't give a crap whatever they're doing. I know that there's enough people out there already to turn it around. So as these numbers grow, we can make 2015 an absolutely beautiful year.
We can indeed. And as you rightly said, nobody likes to see anybody killed. But let's understand that we all have some responsibility for that. We are all culpable because it is the apathy of the masses that allows these socio-psychopaths to perpetrate these events. And of course, as Hitler wrote in Mein Kampf, the greater the crime perpetrated by the leadership, the less likelihood there is that the people will ever believe their leaders to be capable of perpetrating such an event. Ken O'Keefe, thank you for joining me tonight. And join me in 45 minutes for Fracking Nightmare.